Okay, you all good? Let's do it. Hello and welcome to the B2C Lead Generation Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the B2C Lead Generation Podcast. This week we have a slightly different episode because Daniel Hopewell, my erstwhile co-host, has made the dramatic decision to have a child and is currently off on paternity leave. I saw him last week at our Christmas party. He came in with the baby and his wife, which was very nice. So I am hosting this week, and we have a special guest on, who everyone will know. He's been on this podcast that much that he's almost another co-host anyway. So, and he has his own podcast. He knows what he's doing. Welcome to the show, Michael Ferree.
Awesome, man. Thank you for and you know what's crazy is that he's probably getting more sleep than you are.
Almost certainly.
With the newborn, and you've got the 3-year-old waking you up, and he's because that first month the baby just sleeps, right? I mean, it just sleeps and eats and sleeps and eats and poops and eats and sleeps. It's only until a couple months in is when they start waking up, or until they're 3 years old and start running into your room every night. And
Exactly. And you don't have that problem anymore. It's completely gone.
No, I've got a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old that'll be 21 in another week here. And no, it's a whole host of other problems.
Yeah. So what we said we were going to do this week on this podcast is us two will make some predictions that will probably be completely wrong, and we're brave enough and ugly enough to accept that fate. But we'll do it anyway. So these are predictions for 2024. There actually have been quite a lot of changes within 2023 that will impact in 2024 potentially. So I'm guessing some of those we'll cover. What we'll do is you give your 5 predictions. If I have any, I'll chip in and we'll just discuss them as we go through them.
Okay. Well, do you want to tell us what yours were last year? I mean, do you want to go?
I've wrote them down.
I mean, I'm not trying to make you look dumb or anything, but
we'd have to try really hard. So, I'll tell you. So yeah, we did the same show last year, and it was Daniel asking me what I thought, and this was my 5. So number 1 was, and I've talked about this a lot, lead generators building a brand. So my thoughts with it are, just off the top of my head, I will tell you, your ad costs, the biggest impact on your ad costs by a huge amount is the size of your brand in the vertical you operate in. So basically, if you're a lead generator with a brand that nobody knows, you pay shitloads more in ad costs than whoever's the most well-known company or brand in that vertical. So it impacts your ad cost. You can build the relationship with the consumer so that you can actually build other brands in associated or different verticals, and so you can actually cross-sell leads to other companies because you have the trust of the consumer.
And let me ask you something. Did you see any companies like it's obviously hard to measure, but like word of mouth, did you find or see some clients starting to spend a little bit more money internally on their own brand advertising? Because I know, like, I was actually thinking about this last night, because that's all I feel like it's always been an objective of a brand to take a lot of their marketing in-house, so it's more controllable and for a lot of hosts, like a lot of good reasons. But it's for whatever reason, we can speculate, it's always really hard, and they just sort of rely on the easy thing, which is find a partner that can drive them leads, and they just pay cost per action or whatever it is, and then they just work on the sales metrics versus the marketing metrics. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So did you see brands sort of start to spend a little bit more internally on their own and try to figure out their own marketing strategies?
I mean, I think some do. I wouldn't say I've seen a massive amount of it. I think slightly off that point, I think one of the things I've seen is larger brands have stopped buying leads externally.
Yeah.
I don't think they're necessarily generating more, like using performance marketing of their own. They've just carried on advertising in other ways and figuring out sales that way.
Yeah.
But there are a bunch of companies, Bill Rice, who we both know, advocates working with some in the mortgage vertical, helping them build like their lead gen proposition within the brand that they run. Alex, I've forgotten his surname, who you've had on your podcast.
Yeah. I know who you're talking about. Well, I can't think of his name last name either, but I know who
I
you're
know him. It's ridiculous. I can't. Anyway, Alex.
back to sleep.
Yeah. We both know who we're talking about, and his first name is Alex. He does a similar thing, so he helps in financial services, especially brands, build out their own lead generation engine effectively. I think his company is called the Lead Gen Engine. So that kind of happens already. I think that I find it kind of interesting within FCC if that's almost what will happen to some degree. Is the big brands will almost work exclusively potentially with a lead generator, or basically just bring them in-house, whether that's buying them or hiring them, I don't know. And they just operate under that brand and go out and do whatever they were doing. And maybe only at that point will they appreciate the benefits of what we were just talking about, of the ad costs being so much lower when it's related to your brand, and then being able to cross-sell multiple products to consumers that you have trust with. Because these guys that run lead gen, that I think they're massively underappreciated in the brands that they potentially sell leads to. And I think if they could bring them in-house, it would open up an entire world to them. They'd be like, oh shit, why haven't we been doing this?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, so sorry, that was lead generators building brand. Number 2 was lead buying will become more serious. I don't think that's necessarily happened. It's just sort of carried on. Number 3 was call centers will need to adopt a multi-channel approach to buying leads. It's kind of was happening anyway. Less and less people answer the phone. More people want to operate in channels and speak to people in the way that they're used to, whatever. Forms will get customers close to sales. So I was thinking longer forms. I'll take that because I think that that kind of happens with a bit of lead nurturing. You look at companies like Verse.io or AI, whatever the
IO, I think it is. Yep.
IO, yeah. And obviously the rise of ChatGPT and lead generators potentially, whether it's the actual form that someone initially fills in or just some other mechanism to get them closer so that they're booking appointments and it's like, really easy to then get them over the line. And the other was brokers and agencies will need to start adding far more demonstrable value. So rather than like a blind network of, oh yeah, I can get you loads of leads, it's going to have to be, it's kind of in the same way that lead generators need to be transparent with lead buyers to demonstrate, or to the consumer to demonstrate the value that they're adding. Kind of operates in the same way to lead buyers. That was my predictions anyway. So I reckon I would take a C, B- for that.
No, I think those are all fair and maybe a little optimistic, but I think those are all pretty fair. And every year, excuse me, every year I think those will continue to get closer and closer and move needles. You know what I mean? I think those are all, and that's kind of what my point was in my first comment towards you regarding the in-house, bringing sort of more lead gen in-house. Is I think that's been the objective for a while, and it just kind of every year kind of moves a little bit closer for some companies, and other ones they just can't quite figure it out, and they continue to rely on outsource for third-party lead gen. But I think it's always top of mind. Is my point. I think so. I think those are all pretty good. Nice job.
So what? Just on that, what do you think stops these companies bringing it in-house?
Pardon me. I think it's. I don't know. Okay, so here was my thought process last night when I was thinking about it. While I was going to sleep. These are the things that I think about while I'm going to sleep.
Don't tell us the other things. Just keep it to.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think I think what I said earlier, it's easy to create a partnership and go, hey, to somebody, I'm going to send you, I think we were talking about mortgage leads for X amount of dollars. And that's just going to be, it's okay, great. I know right up front how much that marketing is going to cost me and what I'm going to need to do to back that out with contact rate and all, and my efforts and all that sort of stuff. Pretty easy. But now if I want to create my own sort of lead gen campaigns, now I'm talking about if it's Google, if it's media, whatever it is, optimizing those campaigns, those text campaigns, those display campaigns, those landing pages, all those things that become really critical in making a campaign work that the lead gen guys are freaking experts at. I would have to go and hire somebody, and I could hire somebody, but they might not be great, so then I got to hire, I think there's a lot to it. It's complicated, and that's why the lead generation or the performance marketing partnerships are so valuable to some companies and not others. But like, because those are experts in driving those types of transactions, online, or leads,
Yeah.
So I don't know, that was sort of my thought process. Yeah, I think it takes a lot of money sometimes too. So larger companies can hire correctly, they can pay, they can get the right people, then they can test, they have cash to test and get things going. And once it gets going, yeah, man, they're winners in the long run for sure.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah.
It's a strange paradox. So let's get into your predictions then for 2024, and we'll go through them.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I obviously mine are sort of biased towards the United States, right?
That's fine.
So I'll give you mine from here. One thing here that's been top of mind is obviously regulations. The lead gen, the beginning of 2023, it was like hail and brimstone was going to come down, and the industry was going to die a slow death. And I think now we've got the U.S. government has come out and finalized what they expect, and given the industry at first 6 months, but now 12 months to get it all sorted. Basically, for those that don't know, they simply said that the consumer has to opt into each company that their information is going to go to. In the past, the United States lead gen process has been one where a consumer fills out the form, and then the lead generator, or the owner, or the publisher, whatever you want to call them, then decides without telling the consumer where that information is going to go. So it can go to, let's say on with mortgage, it can go to 3 banks, but who knows what banks they were going to be? Nobody knows until they pick up the phone, or they get an email confirmation saying, hey, so-and-so and so is going to call you. Now the form has to go, hey, here are 3 banks. Would you like one of them to call you? And please check the ones that you want. Checkbox, 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 whatever. And then it can go to that one bank. So slight shift. Now there's more control for the consumer, which I think is very, very good for the lead buyer and the consumer. And I think that's really, really good. So regulations is going to continue to be top of mind in 2024. No doubt about it. This is, I think, the basis of most of my my predictions, except for, well, actually, I think most of them.
So with the FCC regulation, that's the thing that's kicked this off, which is part of the TCPA. So what I find interesting about it is that the UK and the EU had GDPR that kicked in like 2018, I think it was, or 19. And what they were trying to do is get people to opt in. So basically, it was a bit like cookies are now, like there has to be consent. And so the UK and the EU, in a lot of respects, outside of certain states like California, had a sort of superior consent mechanism for consumers than the rest of the US. And what's happened in the US with FCC is completely reversed that, because in the UK, you can still have a single checkbox that has multiple brands behind it, as long as you have a link that says like our partners, and there could be 50,000 companies in our partners. But you just check a single checkbox, and we all know the CRO tactics to get people to fill these in. And now the FCC regulations have kind of turned that on its head, because you have to have a one-to-one consent. You can't have that tick box. What I find really interesting about it is it almost comes back to the point about lead generators needing to build brands. Is if I'm a consumer and I go to fill a form in and I put, whatever details in, because you can't send out, you could send the email address over, I believe, because this is all to do with robo dials, which is where it came from. But basically, before I give you the money shot, as in my data, so that I become a valid lead, I'm going to know where my data is going to go. So at that point, if I don't believe that I've been given enough value, or there isn't like a genuine comparison, or there's something else, why would I use it? It comes to this thing of like going to the brand direct. So this was one of the things I mentioned this on a LinkedIn post from the guy at Lead Prosper, the CEO there, the other day. If it might harm lead generators that just rely purely on performance marketing with like a brand they knock up in 10 minutes, go on to AdWords or PPC or Facebook or whatever, bang an ad on there and then come through, because they're going to have to think of ways so that consumers actually complete the lead generation process. Because if it's just like, oh, in the UK, it'd be like HSBC are going to contact you. It's like, they're the biggest bank in the UK. Of course, they're going to contact me. Like, why do I need you to tell me that?
Yeah. Well, so great point. Great point. And that kind of segues into my next one. But before I do segue, the one thing that's funny, this whole loophole is just, you don't have to worry about this if you just pick up the phone like a manual dial. The only, if this only matters if you're using an auto dialer.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Will everyone just go back to like those, those old like
pick up the
dial
phone
things?
and dial and just manual dial everybody. The whole industry started doing that. It wouldn't be a problem. But anyways, it would reduce calls, which is good, and all that sort of things we want to do. But your point segues into my next prediction, is that on-page optimization will sort of have a revival, of a resurgence of focus, because now, back, 10 years, 15 years ago, when on-page optimization was really key, and landing page, and I'm talking about landing page, that's going to be uber important now to how do we get the consumer, how do we show value, to your point, to the consumer, and then also how do we get them to select the amount of companies or selections we want, because depending on, I don't want to get into the weeds, but depending on how the technology works on the back based on bidding, we more than likely would want them to select more than one. Just an assumption based on price. So how do we encourage the consumer to, one, think there's value in the process, two, think there's value in selecting more than one, and getting that to convert. And I think that's going to be really key, because really before it'd be like, show some that you're going to save, interest rates are at an all-time low. Okay, great. Fill out this form. We'll get you the lowest rate. Okay. Now it's like, to your point, oh, HB, they're going to call me. Okay. Why could I just reach out to them? What value am I getting out of doing this? Or comparing, shopping or doing whatever it is. And so I think there's going to be resurgence with on-page optimization for sure.
Yeah. I think, there was two thoughts, just had another thought, but one of them was I was thinking of like the sunk cost fallacy, because if you get someone quite far through a form just answering questions, they're far less likely to drop off, because they've now invested so much time in like filling this damn thing in, that if I like only have 2 steps left to go, which was choose the brand and input your telephone number or whatever it is, I'm just going to complete it because I don't want to have wasted 7 minutes of my life. So I wonder if that could play a part.
Yeah, I think there's ways around it. That's my point. I think there's ways to show and wording, and the wording that you put on the landing page to show some value and give some reasons, and how you set up the form, all this sort of stuff. But I think that's going to be a major focus over in 2024 for sure.
And I think the interesting thing is it sort of goes back to that point you said of brands doing internal lead generation, is if we start to see a pattern that people are only ever opting into one brand at a time, and lead generators can't, like, outside of like making 3 mandatory or something, can't like adjust that. It's this thing of like, well, I may as well just do it for them because that's all that's happening anyway. I'm effectively selling leads to one company. I may as well go and sit with them and go, I'll go and do this for you and give me the profit of the difference that I would have made by getting you, whatever it is. So it's interesting how you could see that becoming bigger if consumers don't operate the way that lead generators hope they potentially will.
Yeah. I mean, my gut tells me that consumers are wanting to shop for these things and want to compare prices, or they would just go to HSBC, or they would just go to their bank and get whatever they give them. But they do want an easy way to compare multiple options. I think that's so. So I think this will continue. I think it's pretty easy to persuade somebody in a good way. I'm not saying in a bad way. Persuade somebody or show evidence that comparing at least two options is in your best interest. You want to have two companies going, hey, well, I got this guy over here giving me this, and I've got, what can you beat it? You want to have that battle between two companies to get the best price, or three. So I think it's going to work. I think it's fine. I don't see any difference. I think it's just it's no more just a dumb form and a click button. You're going to have to be a little bit more intelligent with the content on the landing page.
And do you think any of the brands that currently operate like technology, like a dialer, will just go back to manual dialing?
No, I think the industry is going to shift towards accommodating this so that they can continue to use dialers, because it is most effective and efficient, to have that, and you can get through numbers quicker and you can dial faster when you get that lead. And at scale, you really have to have that technology in place. So no, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to. We have the United States has 12 months to get this all situated, and already companies, which segues into my next prediction, is technology is going to change. As far as distribution software or lead management software is just changing, and how ping post technology or getting bids on a random, a piece of data is going to change a little bit because of this process. But I think there's plenty of time for all that to happen, and companies are already making those changes, or already have made those changes in some cases, and they'll certainly make the changes before the end of 2024. And the industry will already have changed before the regulations have gone into place, and people are already adapted. So I don't think call center technology will be affected by this at all.
And when this first came into public awareness, or like a lot of companies sort of knew about it earlier in the year, but it's it really came into focus when it actually happened. I think Eric Troutman was saying it's going to kill smaller companies and the individual buyers and whatever. What's interesting though is none of those guys use automated technology. They are doing it manually. So for those, I don't see that happening. I was like, they're the least affected by this whole thing. Because they can just carry on as they are.
Yeah, I do remember him saying that, and I remember, I couldn't remember, I can't remember at this point. Maybe you can remind me. Was he talking about a small brand or a small lead generator?
He was talking about like individual loan officers or something, or
yeah.
one-man bands that are just sort of operating a franchise of a bigger group or whatever and buying leads from whoever.
Yeah.
Because they just get their mobile phone out and it's going into Google Sheet or something, and they sit there and dial it. That's literally what happens.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, I don't see. Let me ask you this though: if there is HBC or HSBC, and then Simon's Mortgage on there, and the next Bank of London, are they going to choose Simon's Mortgage, or are they going to choose Bank of London and HSBC? So when given the choice, might some of those smaller, less brand aware, with less brand awareness, be hurt by that choice?
Well, that's the great thing. You don't have to have them in that choice because they're not affected by the ruling.
Yeah, but you're not going to have you're saying that, well, okay, so if I build a landing page out and I have this process in place, I guess, are you saying that I just could just automatically select them?
Well, no, because if they're manually dialing, it doesn't follow the same rules, right? So if you had like, you'd have to put a cap on it. So you could say, let's say it was 3 independent people who are just, that's their job at home, like, just get it in Google Sheet, and then they've got HSBC and Royal Bank of Scotland or whatever it is. There's only 2 of those companies that you have to collect the opt-in and the consent statement in advance of sending the lead. You could actually like send the lead to the others without even showing
Well, they
the
still have to
brand.
opt in. They still have to consent to getting like that information. It just doesn't have to be manually selected.
Yeah, you do it on the form at the end with the TCPA statement, but you don't have to. Yeah.
I just wonder if that like is just like another.
I mean, that's the problem is it's like when people moan about people that have an offshore bank account in the Bahamas or something, and they're like, well, the loophole in the law that allows me to do it. It's a similar type of thing. Someone could argue like, well, I would never have filled this in if I'd have known you were going to sell my data to 3 like small guy. So
you know what I would do is I would so again, back to this technology, how the technology is going to change as far as lead distribution goes. If you had a segment of buyers that opted in and said, hey, I'm manually dialing and I take all legal risk and I'm telling you this, and you can run your ads or your landing pages accordingly. Yeah, if I've got a group of those over here, and then I've got a group that are doing auto dialers or whatever over here, yeah, I can decide initially, but that the matching engine, it still needs to move up, I guess, in the form before they hit submit. Because what I would want to do is I would want to have a form that has everything, then pinging against my system. And if I have 3 guys that don't need to be opted in, or 2 or whatever it is, then I'll just cut the form short, show them a final third page that just says, with the normal TCPA disclaimer, and submit, and then off you go. If I don't have those, and then I'd have to show these guys over here, or maybe they're paying more, then I would show a different page that has those manual opt-ins. So like the matching though would still have to like start up here and ping to what I'm going to show them. Because I don't know. There's probably another way around it, but that's an interesting idea. Those guys could pay less.
But the thing is, the only difference would be as well is that you probably couldn't use ping post because those guys don't have the technology to bid. They're just getting like leads in some like.
Yeah, or they're just doing it. No, but it's not even a ping post. To be honest,
just a delivery to them with a TCPA statement at the end, right?
Yeah, it's just what's your bid? And I'm telling you, I'm the account manager. You tell me how much you want to pay for a lead, and I put it in our system. And if it triggers and the right price, and you're the top bidder, then great. It goes to you. But yeah, it's interesting, and I think that the technology will evolve. And someone brought up something on the last call I had with Troutman, which I'm not even sure I should bring up because I'm not sure I can articulate it well. But we have a thing in the United States called trigger leads. And basically what that means is when somebody pulls credit, like let's say you pull credit for like a new loan for a car or a mortgage, that trigger, because it gets triggered to the credit bureaus, can be sold. So they can sell your
if you append it to your data and then
well, no, that information, Mike Ferree just pulled his credit. Here's his address, phone number, can be purchased when it gets sold. It's crazy. It's the craziest thing ever. So I'll start getting calls, for refinancing my mortgage or what loans or something like that, it's so wild because those should be the first things that should be cut out. No one's opting into this shit, but these sort of, someone fills out a form and doesn't really go hit, that could be sort of sold as like almost a trigger data point. Does that make sense? Not a contact, but like a data point that goes, hey, this guy's out here, and that could be sold to some extent.
That's why I was thinking about like the append. So rather than selling their data, what you sell is if they own the person's personal contact details and you have the trigger, it's who's got this, like, you know, and how you'd match it, something. But email address, if you got this person's email address, because I've got an event that's just happened, and now that is a hot lead that you can do whatever you want with.
Yeah, so technology, and I think the industry is going to evolve, and I think this is all really, really good. I think consumer choice and consumer control is good for brands and lead buyers and transparency and all that good stuff. So I think this is really, really good stuff, and I don't think it's killed the industry. It just changed it a little bit. And you know, this is the people that work in performance marketing and are, you know, entrepreneurs. They're people that like to figure things out. They continually are on optimization mode and change mode on a regular basis. If you're buying media, or if you're in the lead business, nothing is same day to day. There's a fire waiting around every single corner, right? You know what I mean? And you have to be ready for that. And they're used to this. So by no means were people going to just pack up their bag and go, oh, this doesn't work anymore. You know, that's not how it works.
I think a lot was driven by like the sort of fire and brimstone. It was that like the small businesses are going to die, and you know, whatever.
Well, it was scary there for a second. No, I mean, not scary, but it was, you know, the first thing you have to, before you start putting thought to something and figuring out a solution, it's like, oh shit, that's okay. This can change a lot of different things. Listen, there are companies out there that sell, at least here in the United States, that sell data, age data. That is going to be completely illegal at the end of 2024. You know, you cannot sell age data because there is not that opt-in, unless you're selling to the same person, to the same company over and over. And why would that person want to buy that same lead? You know, but yeah,
trigger leads.
That should be next. Oh, well,
because whoever owns that date.
You're probably right. The prediction is don't make predictions.
Well, it depends whether they have consent for it or not. So if they have consent, and then this is what's interesting with the difference with this FCC ruling and the GDPR is GDPR was actually around the protection of people's data, whereas the FCC is around stopping automated dialing, and that's the difference with it. And so elements of it are far more stringent, but other bits of the FCC or the US data regulations are far more relaxed. So like email, you still like the Wild West, you do whatever you want with it.
Sort of, yeah. But yeah, so that'll change. My last prediction, which I think you've actually heard before me say this, and so it's nothing new, but the inbound call, you know, lead gen, whatever you want to call it, but inbound pay per call industry will continue to grow. And this will grow even more because some of these regulations. Now, outbound dialing has always been hard. It's getting harder, and it's getting scarier because of regulations and all this sort of stuff, and making sure you're doing things the right way and blah, blah, blah. But if I can pay for an inbound call, my world is a lot easier. And there are companies buying, you know, here in the insurance industry, millions of calls a month, and you know, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of calls a month. And I think that'll continue to be an area of this sort of performance marketing world, lead generation world, that will continue to grow, because it's easy, one, for the consumer to click to call. It's easy to, you know, they just on their cell phone, boom, I don't need to fill out a form. It's just a call. It goes into an IVR. They just answer a few questions. That gets distributed to the right buyer of that call. And they're talking to somebody within a minute or two. And that buyer of that call does not have to worry about making outbound calls, does not have to have an outbound sales center. They're just taking orders every day. So I think the pay per call industry will continue to grow and potentially dominate data leads, at least here in the US.
So do you know just a quick question on that? How are most of these calls generated? Is it lead generators with a form bidding on like PPC, but they have a phone, click to call as well, and then, you know, they're hoping one or the other happens?
Yeah, there's that. There's phone numbers on landing pages, obviously. Anytime you have a phone number that's clickable, you can put it anywhere. So I mean, I know there's guys doing, classified ads, right? For free, and just doing a ton of them. Craigslist ads. I don't know if you guys have Craigslist there, but like little things like that, all the way up to paid, paid phone numbers on paid ads, display ads, Facebook, social media, anywhere you can put a phone number. A clickable phone number is an opportunity to create an inbound call.
Yeah.
So it's endless.
You can see how that, well, yeah, 100%.
TV, radio, all these things. There's not a channel that you can't have a phone number on. And so the key though now over the last 8 years or so is the technology that allows a person to distribute a call to a highest bidder. So that's the sort of new development that's now allowed middlemen, lead gen guys to utilize phone calls in a effective manner that generates them the most amount of money that is the market can support. You know what I mean? And so
we won't go over my thoughts on that. I think we did it on the previous podcast.
Yeah, I know, but I'll just argue that it's the same thing that happens with leads to the same.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I mean, when someone's gonna pay for a higher lead, it's just kind of the market. I mean, that's free market.
Well, the thing is, I suppose they've chosen the consumer. Whatever is that they're seeing, they've chosen to call it, and they can always. It's only a lead. It's not a sale. They can back out if they want. It's entirely up to them.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's my final prediction, Simon. What do you think?
I think that was all very good. It was very FCC heavy.
I know. I couldn't, with everything going, I'm sure there's other stuff. I was gonna say, AI will still be overhyped and overused. An overused term. I don't know. I'm sure there's a ton of other things that will continue on. The one thing about this industry, which is kind of funny, kind of not, is that it's very slow moving sometimes. Like we can talk. I swear to God, we'll have the same, predictions or at least goals every year. Brands will become more better transparency. All those sorts of things for consumers. And it'll inch its way every year, and it won't be like a light switch kind of thing.
I read a quote earlier. In fact, I'm going to try and find it. It was something like, nothing ever happens within a year, or it was something like, nothing happens quickly in a year, but you'll never believe what you can achieve in 10 years. And it is this idea. And I thought that when I was writing down, like, what did I predict last year? And I wrote it down. I was like, I could easily just say that again this year. And if no one remembers it, I could just repeat it and go, oh yeah, this, and this.
Yeah, but hopefully in 10 years or 5 years or whatever it is, we'll look back and go, wow, a lot's changed. And hopefully for the good. I think so. I mean, I gotta be honest with you. One thing there's always going to be people that are going to cut corners. We know that it's human nature. And people are going to, especially when it comes to money, making money. But also at the same time, I think people see or recognize that doing the right thing for all parties within whatever they do in their whatever business they're in, if they're able to make consumers happy and their partners happy and do better and provide a better service, then that is good. And I think most people have that, outlook. Instead of going, I'm going to make this, I'm going to cut this corner. And there are those guys that do that, and those people. But I think the majority want to have a better offering for everybody so that they can grow and scale and make money, the right way.
And so
maybe I'm a little too optimistic. But...
No, I think you're right. I speak to lead buyers and lead sellers every day, and I would say, well, maybe it's just the circle of people I speak to, but most people want to do the right thing. They want to achieve good outcomes for like every part of the lead generation process, whether that's consumers and the buyers or the sellers or whatever. And it's going back to a point you made about lead generators earlier, you know, these guys, they're constantly having to be on their feet and think about everything. Is the whole thing is like a risk reward model. So there's massive failure and massive opportunity around every single corner. What I wanted to ask you is, you've got Lead Gen World coming up in, like, what is it, 3 weeks?
Yeah, a couple weeks in Florida, Hollywood, Florida, not Hollywood, California, but Hollywood, Florida.
Yeah. And do you expect that to be dominated by FCC and you know, or do you think other stuff will start to happen? It feels like it's just like hanging over everyone, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's no doubt this is going to be the first conference where people will get together and talk about this face to face. So without question, it's going to be a topic of most discussions, and figuring out, you know, sort of that consortium of everyone, how we're going to work together from a technology standpoint to continue to do business at scale. Yeah, I think so. I think that you know, and really sort of all the basic normal conversations around optimization, you know, lead management best practices, you know, all those sorts of things are going to be a hot topic. But you're right, yeah, around everything sort of revolving around these industry changes will be talked about. You know, how what do buyers expect out of their lead sellers? What kind of transparency is going to be demanded, not just by the regulators but also by the buyers? You know, all that sort of stuff will be. It should be a really good show. I'm gonna miss seeing you. I'm sad you're not able to make it out.
Yeah, I'm sorry too. Well, I just
Short flight. Come on, what was it?
I
6
know
hours?
I was actually looking at it thinking it's not that far actually.
Yeah.
We'll see. But the
Hey,
do
you
you
can
know,
get some sleep if you come.
do you know why this is a genuine thing? That a few weeks ago, me and my wife met up with another couple that have got kids the same age as ours, and in the UK the kids split up today, so I'm going to go home soon, and you know, I'm off now for Christmas. But because they're splitting up quite late, it normally happens earlier than this, they're not going back to school until something like the 10th of January. And so they said, should we go on holiday in January? And I was like, we could go to Florida and I'll go to a show and you guys go to a beach or whatever. And but anyway, we'll see what happens. One final thing I wanted to ask you is, and this is more just curiosity from my part,
Yeah.
with Eric Troutman, is like, don't you think it's incredible? Like he's a great personality. How he's like dominated the lead generation industry in the US. It's like, I've never seen anything like it. It's like his personality's gone, and the Troutman Amin brand, and it's amazing. This, like, who would have ever thought a lawyer could get like a following like this?
Yeah, listen, and Troutman, Eric and I are friends. I think that he's a great supporter of mine, and I'm a great supporter of his. And so, you know, me even saying this wouldn't be a surprise to him. He's a good marketer,
Yeah.
and he's very smart with when it comes to TCPA regulations. And not only that, he's very, very good at articulating some of these very difficult things, because usually, and this doesn't, I'm sorry to anybody that's a TCPA attorney, but or any regulatory attorney, it can get quite boring and complicated. And I'll start to go, what is this guy talking about? You know, but Eric knows how to keep it up, keep it going, and keep it you know, understandable to us laymen. So he's really good at that. And you know, listen, sometimes his marketing gets a little too fired up, if you know what I mean. Like he'll get a little exuberant about certain things, and I've even said, hey, dude, back it down. You know what I mean? I'm not sure sometimes the words you're using are beneficial for the industry. And he can take it or leave it. We all have our own opinions, and that I don't judge him, or I hope he doesn't judge me for my own opinions. He's the one that's smart with the regulations, but he's a good guy. I really appreciate the work that he and Pooja do in the industry, and their passion for it, because the passion is what drives them to keep us all on top of what's happening, and to go to Washington and talk to the regulators on behalf of this industry. So yeah, what they do is great. I certainly appreciate it. But yeah, he's done a great job at marketing himself. And some people get a chuckle out of it and love it, and some people get annoyed and hate it. But whatever.
Yeah, for me personally, I think it's like amazing. Exactly like you said, for the marketing perspective. And I just look at it and think, can you imagine a lawyer in the UK doing that? It just like it just wouldn't happen. You almost cannot envisage it. So it's testament to him, and like you said, his personality and like the way that that's what I think is incredible. Like he's made this happen. And it's like, on top of being a lawyer and having to know all this stuff, exactly like you said, and trying to translate what is very complicated jargon and complex,
Yeah.
At the same time build a brand that has the entire industry like following it, because it's so important, and that's what he's managed to like translate, but in a way that it like sparks debate. It's inclusive. It gets people talking about it. It's not just like some lawyer going, Dow must do this sort of thing.
Yeah, no, he's a bit of an anomaly for sure. And he does know how to spark he's passionate, right? So sometimes and passion is reflected back to him, either positively or negatively. When you're at a certain wavelength, sometimes that wavelength gets, and some people don't agree, so they respond passionately and disagree on certain things. I don't think he's been wrong on most things. I think, in fact, anything necessarily.
Maybe his choice of hats is
Yeah.
pretty wrong on that.
Maybe his choice. No, those are awesome. I think he does a great job, man. I think when you're passionate, I think it reflects in your work and what you do for it, and I think that's a testament to their success and what they're doing. They're passionate about it. So yeah, it's all good. I'm happy to have somebody at least doing that on behalf of the industry.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thank you very much for coming on, Michael.
Yes.
This has been, because Daniel's been off, we've basically missed the whole of December. We normally do a podcast every week, so this is the only one of this month. It'll be the last one of the year. And you've been the perfect guest for it, so thank you very much.
Well, we missed Daniel on it. But yeah, it was good to chat. Have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, New Year's. Maybe by luck, if you want to come to good old Hollywood, Florida, email me and we'll make that happen.
Yeah, and I hope you have a great show, and I'm sure everyone will enjoy it that's there.
Awesome.
Cheers. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for listening to the B2C Lead Generation podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe to hear more from those at the very cutting edge of the lead gen world.